Hello and welcome to your Left-handed Bandit mobile paint party experience. Thank you so much for choosing to paint along with me. Today's theme is going to be flowers in a glass. This theme is originally meant to be a Mother's Day theme, but it'll paint just the same on any holiday or any other regular day. We're going to go over some materials that you'll be needing for this. Most of the materials came with your kits. Other materials can be found around your home. First things first, we're going to need 6 different colors that should be included with your kit. You should have the colors red, yellow, purple, blue, black, and white. You should have 6 different individual cups. You can either work out of those cups or you can take that paint and pour it onto a flat disposable surface such as a cardboard box flap, a shoebox top, or a paper plate. Next thing you should have is a cup of water. A cup of water did not come with your kit, but if you have a cup, disposable cup or plastic cup at home, all you need is a little bit of water, inch or two. Don't need too much. Your kit should have come with a pre-plotted canvas, that is, as you can see right here on camera. It should be something like this. And your kit also should have came with an apron and paintbrushes. Each kit comes with a different assortment of brushes, but you should have one big brush and one little brush. Some kits come with a flat brush and a sponge brush. Other kits come with a pointer brush and a sponge brush. Some kits come with no foam brush and come with one large flat and one small flat. Whichever the combination of brushes that you have, you are going to need one big brush and one small brush. For this painting, I'm going to paint with my big flat and my small flat. But at home, if you have a sponge brush for the big flat parts that I use, you can substitute with your sponge brush as your bigger brush. So again, your sponge brush, if you have that in your kit, is going to be your bigger brush. And whatever other brush is there, whether it be a small flat or a pointer, is what you're going to use for the small brush parts. So I'm swapping my brushes out with a big flat and small flat as mentioned. You're going to need a napkin or a paper towel to dry your brush off on. It's going to come in handy. Aside from that, those are all the items that should have came with your kit. So what we're going to do is jump right into the painting by starting to get our background colors filled in first so that they have enough time to dry up on us. So first we're going to start by mixing a brown paint. We're going to put brown, this is a table, this is a window pane behind our foreground and the background. We're going to be painting all this with different blends of brown. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with your small brush, whatever is your smallest brush. Swish it around in water a little bit. Tap your cup. Dab both sides of your paintbrush off on your paper towel to remove the excess water from the paint bristles. What you're going to do from there with this small brush is we're going to mix up brown and fill in our brown areas that are in the background. To mix brown, we're going to need to take red and yellow first and mix up orange. So find a clean area in your plate or surface, whichever you're working from. Mix red paint with that yellow paint to create orange paint. Going to need a decent amount. You don't want to mix up all your red and yellow. Leave a little bit for later in case you want to do some things with that. After you have your orange paint, immediately go and grab just a touch of blue paint and add that to your orange paint, one bit at a time. After mixing for a few minutes, your paint's going to start to make a brown color. And that brown is what we're going to use. If you want your brown to be a bit darker, you can add a little bit more blue, but don't add too much blue, otherwise it won't be brown anymore. It'll start to turn an olive color. So this is my brown paint. I have a lighter brown. What I'm going to do with this brown paint is I'm going to fill in all the wood areas in my background. So I'm going to start with the skinny parts of the paint by simply just taking that paintbrush and swiping that paint and filling in those areas. Try your best to stay in between the lines. You can paint directly over your black outlines, your pre-plot. That is Sharpie. The Sharpie will appear through the paint. So feel free, it is completely okay to fill over all that Sharpie. Notice that depending on the direction of the line depends on the brush stroke. For this segment that's in the middle, the line is going up and down, so I'm painting in an up and down brush stroke. For the segment that's going across, I'm going to paint across. Just makes things easier. So I'm filling in these areas. Canvas is moving a little bit. I'm filling these in with just a flat layer of paint for now. I can go back and add details and tones and values later on in the painting. But for now, I'm just keeping it nice and simple and filling in these brown sections. Now, the awesome part about these videos and these tutorials is that they are digital, so feel free to rewind the video if you need to, a few seconds back. If you need a step repeated, feel free to pause the video if you need a second to catch up to any step that I'm doing here. And take your time with this. So I got those segments filled in. Next, I want to fill in the table right at the bottom. Take some brown paint, and I'm painting across. Notice that as I'm painting, I'm leaving some of that area open. And the reason I'm doing this is so that I can work in some blends in just a bit. So feel free to leave a couple of small areas of that background canvas nice and visible so that we can add other colors into the mix in just a few minutes. If you run out of brown paint, mix up some more. Remember, mix orange first with red and yellow, then add a little bit of blue. If you add blue and red to that brown paint that you already create, you'll make that paint a lot darker. So if you're gonna go darker with your brown, add a little bit of blue and add a little bit of red paint and it'll go darker. So I got my paints filled in the background, I got the table filled in. The only other thing I do before I begin blending in more colors is gonna take a little bit of brown paint. And right here, in this area of our flowers, I'm gonna streak in just a little bit of brown paint, because when we add those flowers on later on, we want to be able to see through some of those flowers and see that there is actually a window structure behind it. I'm going to do the exact same thing right about here. I'm just lightly painting it in. You don't have to paint it full, just a few areas that we'll be able to see that wood through just a little while, So I have my brown on where it needs to go. Next, I'm going to blend in some more colors. I'm going to continue to use the same exact paintbrush. I am not going to dip it in water. I am not going to clean the brush off right now. I'm simply going to take the brush, wipe it off on my paper towel, get the excess paint off of it. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to grab just a touch of white paint. And with that white paint, I'm going to add this white paint to those areas of white canvas. And while that paint is still wet, you'll be able to blend these colors together to make a nice, smooth gradient blend on your canvas. Now, if you're trying to blend now, maybe you've waited a couple of minutes, maybe you stepped away from your painting and you're trying to blend and that paint's not blending, it's simply because that paint has dried up. We are using acrylic paint. Acrylic paint dries very fast, usually within 3 to 7 minutes. Especially if you're in a well-ventilated area, it might even be faster than that within a few minutes. So there's a plethora of reasons why that may not be blending, but the main reason is because that paint has dried. So add on some more brown paint if you need to, and remix in your colors. So I got some white mixed in there. I got a couple of small areas I missed, so I'm gonna go back real fast and grab those. And now I got a white blend going into that brown to give it some extra detail. As long as those other parts of my painting are still wet, I can blend in white to other parts of this window as well. Just add some extra details. Notice that I'm hardly giving it any real detail. I'm just kind of adding a few brush strokes. Ironically, I've learned the less you try with paintings when it comes to detail, the better it usually comes out. So try not to be a perfectionist and simply just flick your wrists with those brush strokes. So I got white detail going in the brown blends and the panes as well as the table. If you want, you can add a little bit more white just to make it pop a bit. That's up to you completely. But Add as many steps and touches to this background as you can, especially on the table, because later on we need this background to be fully dry after our video break so that we can add things to the foreground. So I have all my brown on there. I have my paint, I have my table. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my cup. I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off and get it nice and clean. Tap it on the side of the cup a couple times. Dab both sides of that paintbrush off on my paper towel to remove the excess water from my paintbrush bristles. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to fill in these background square shapes. This is going to be our actual outside, looking outside of the window. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These areas need to be filled in with paint. The color we're going to use next is blue paint. So with this blue paint, I am going to add a little bit to the windows and mix it in with some white. So you can watch me first. I'm going to take it pane by pane. I'm going to paint with an up and down brush stroke for these different parts. I'm painting up and down, vertically, up and down. I'm going to start right up here in the top right and adding in just a few brush strokes of blue. Notice, again, up and down. If you need to paint horizontal, that's fine, just to kind of cover some ground. But when we're blending, we want to always make sure we're painting up and down. This is really, really important for the effect of the painting that we're aiming for. So I'm going to literally just swipe in. I'm leaving some open areas on that window. I got vertical brush strokes, some open areas of background, going up and down. What I'm going to do next is I'm wiping the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto the paper towel. I'm not dipping my paintbrush in water. I'm going to grab a little white paint. And with that white paint, I'm going to go and essentially do the same thing I did with my brown paint. And I'm going to blend in these areas on this window. I am hardly blending the paint. I'm just kind of touching it to the paint, going up and down, and it's blending on its own. You do not have to press super hard. The goal of this step is to be able to see a good amount of balance between that darker, more Carolina blue that we originally started with, as well as see a difference between that and the lighter baby blues. So a mixture. We don't want one new monotone color that's all baby blue. We want a mixture of those tones so that it gives our painting some detail. So I got brush strokes going up and down that top right. I'm going to do the exact same thing to each and every square. And when I get to things like my leaves, things like my flowers, of course, I'm going to work around those. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit just so you can see. Again, if you need to go horizontal, if you need to paint across, that does come in handy for kind of cutting off that brown so that you don't accidentally go into it later. But always remember to finish off with horizontal brush strokes. And I'm being super, super random about this. There's no real structured formula to this. It is all random. If you are feeling confident or as you get more comfortable with this process, you can even do a couple of window panes at a time, kind of like I'm doing right now. So I'm just speeding it up just to give you that effect. But of course, if you need to pause this video for any reason, be sure to pause it, rewind it if you need to get certain steps. I'm working around my flowers. Notice I'm still keeping that up and down brush stroke. I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my paintbrush onto my paper towel. I did 2 areas right here just so that I can blend these the right way. I need to go a little fast, otherwise this paint could dry up on me a little. So again, as you blend in that white, you're looking for the perfect balance between that lighter blue and that original blue that we started using. We're using up and down brush strokes. It's kind of random wisp of paint. The more random you are, the more detail and character and texture your painting is going to have. So filling that in pretty fast just so I can jump to this pane below it. Up and down brush strokes. Not caring too much about being a perfectionist because this is going to add to my painting later. I'm going to come down to this other section, do the exact same thing, fill those in. Filling those in, being careful not to go inside of my flowers or my wooden frame. However, if you accidentally go inside of those other areas. It is not the end of the world. Feel free to just grab more paint and fix any mistakes. Paint is always going to fix any mistakes that we make when it comes to these paintings. So again, not looking for all of one new tone, but a mixture between, a balance, I should say, between those blues. So I got 3 areas filled in, working around those flowers. Remember that there's a little corner over here. There's little corners in different parts. You want to make sure we get those. I'm going to move to the segment right below it. There's a little bit of blue that I should be getting right here. I'm going to work my way around these flowers. I'm going to work my way around these leaves. Again, I can kind of block out different shapes like the leaves by adding a boundary or a border layer of paint. And if you need to switch directions of your brush strokes, that's fine, just to add those. And those are going to protect us from going in those parts later. So, creating another border right here. Add some vertical brush strokes, up and down. I got a lot of blue in here, so over on this part, I'm gonna leave it a bit more open for white. So I'm gonna add some here and there. Notice I went inside my leaves just a little bit, and that's okay. It is not the end of the world. I'm going to swipe in this white paint. Remember, you do not have to be a perfectionist about this. I got a little bit of blue paint in my brown. It's not the end of the world. Before I decide to take my break, I can just simply cover that up with a little bit more brown paint. So again, if you accidentally get paint on other parts or in other parts, don't panic. Keep on going. Once that dries, you can simply paint over it with more paint. Super easy thing to fix. Up and down brush strokes, not really caring about the detail too much because it's gonna reveal itself in the end. I'm gonna put a little white in this area up here at the corner. Now I got 2 more spaces that I need to have filled before I jump to the next part of the painting. So I'm coming over here, I'm gonna fill in this corner completely with paint. I'm gonna block off that wooden window pane. I'm gonna keep my brush strokes vertical, up and down. Block this paint off so I don't go into that by accident. Add those vertical lines. Break these areas up a little bit. That's gonna add more variety, more detail to your piece. I'll go ahead and fill that in. White paint, vertical brush strokes, going into the flowers just a little bit, but that's okay. Up and down. Let it take its own effect. And I'm gonna add a little bit of white up here just to give some highlights. Now we got our last section of outdoor area to finish. So same deal, blocking off any parts that we want to protect, working our way around the leaves. Blocking off that table area. Now I'm going to add in some of this vertical blue brush strokes, taking that paint upward. I'm gonna come up here and take this paint downward. Block off that little area right here. Take this paint upward. Now this is ready for some white paint to be blended inside of it. So I'm going to grab some white paint, continue adding those vertical brush strokes to blend in. Up and down. Doing our best to avoid other areas, but not making a big deal about it in case we do temporarily jack those areas up, because we know we can easily fix those same areas. All right, I'm liking the way that's looking, so I'm going to pause that right there on the windows. You can add a couple more details if you'd like, but we need to do a couple more small things before we give our canvas a break. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue paint on the inside of these flowers. And the reason being is because we want to be able to see through some of those petals so that we can see that the fact that there's actually window outside, some translucency through the actual flowers. So to do that, we're not even going to switch brushes. We're not even going to switch colors just yet. I'm simply adding in a few dabs of blue paint to this entire bouquet. This is the second bouquet right here. I'm going to go to the back, adding a few blue streaks here, and just a couple small ones in the back one that's hidden. Do the exact same thing like I was doing with the window and add some white to that, because again, once this dries for our foreground, we're going to be able to, in some parts of our flowers, see that through some of those spaces and gaps of the flowers that there is a window back there. And that's just going to simply make our painting make a little bit more sense. There's going to be other colors going on top of these, of course, but it will all make sense in the second part of this video. So adding these, and when I'm done with this, there is just one more step in this half. And then it's very, very important to let your canvas dry. And once your canvas is dry, then you can continue with part two. So I'll say that again. Once you make these few details and these few touches, let that canvas dry before moving on to part two of the video. So I got one more step that I want to do before I take my break. And what I'm going to do before doing that step is take my cup of water. I'm going to clean my paintbrush off in water, get it as clean as I can. Tap it on the side of my cup. Dab both sides off on your paper towel to get that excess water out of the paint bristles. And next, we're going to mix up green. To make green, we're going to need to mix blue and yellow together. So find a clean area on your plate and get a scoop of yellow. Swipe it off there. Grab a little bit of blue at a time and keep mixing that blue in to that yellow until you have green. Mix up enough of it because we're going to need it for all four of those leaves. So I would say no bigger than the size of a quarter at the absolute biggest. You may even need just a little bit less of it. So I got my green paint mixed up right there in the bottom corner. I'm going to take all of my leaves and completely fill them in with green paint. So I'm doing green paint for all of these leaves. If you want to be daring and make these leaves other colors, that is completely up to you. This is your painting, of course. Just know that I can't guarantee similar results with different colors, but I encourage you at this point, if you are comfortable, to start trying out new tricks, whether you're an experienced painter or not. So I got a second leaf filled in. I got two more to go. That's number 3. And last but not least, this is our 4th leaf. So we got all 4 of our leaves filled in. Now, technically, we can take a break. However, I'm going to add one more step on my end. You do not have to do the exact same thing on your canvas, but I want to give these leaves a bit more dimension, the same way we're going to do with our flowers and the same way we did with our table. So to do that, I need to shade in a little bit. So I'm going to give it a tint and a highlight. In art, these things are completely opposite. Tints are when you add white paint. Highlights are when you add black paint. So I'm going to add a little bit of white paint first. I'm not even cleaning off my brush. I'm adding a little bit of white paint to that paintbrush. And I'm going to just paint half of my leaf with that white paint. It's going to make a lighter shade of green. So half is light, Gonna do that with the next one as well. I'm lightly brushing back and forth, and it's gonna blend my colors together. Now again, remember, you don't have to do this if you're not comfortable with this, or if you've decided to try it and then on first attempt you're not liking the way it's looking, then just stop exactly where you are, let that dry, add more green paint right over the top of it once that's dry. So if you're not liking the way this is going so far and you are deciding to try this added step, then pause on it, let it dry, paint right over it. So half of that is a tint of white, and I'm going to add a shade of black on the other side by adding a little bit of black paint to my green and giving myself a darker green. You can either do this on a clean area of your mixing surface, or you can do this on directly on canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint half of my leaf with the shade, which is a bit darker green paint. And then I'm going to do that to all 4 of my leaves. Notice I'm just giving it very minimal detail. Remember, the less detail and effort you put in things like this, the more it's going to appear or read as a painterly painting, which means it looks like it's actually painted. It gives it a certain effect, and that is the goal with these, just because these are quick paintings. Whether you're a skilled painter or not, these are usually about an hour and some change sessions. So there's only so much that we can get done. However, we can always work on them in the future, but that's at your own convenience. So as is, I have my brown, I have my blue background, I have some blue in the flowers, and I have my green leaves. So as this currently stands, I'm going to take a break on this piece and let this dry up so that we can add things to the foreground. So that is going to be it for this section of the video. We're just shy of 30 minutes in. And tune into part 2 once your canvas has completely dried so that we can begin adding the foreground.